there are redundancies to Scottie Barnes and Pascal Siakam. I want to make that clear. But if you surround Pascal Siakam and Scottie Barnes with shooting, that's a really good team. And the Raptors just didn't do that. And so I find myself, I mentioned this to you before you come on, I'm trying to center my thoughts on how I feel about Scottie Barnes because they're so scattered and disorganized and chaotic, because I don't know how much blame to ascribe to him versus like the roster construction really wasn't built, frankly, to optimize like most of their top talent. It was like a lot of Pascal Siakam played really well, almost in spite of how the roster was built around him.
Entirely that. And I agree with that 120 million %. I think with Scottie, where we saw a little bit of regression is with his efficiency. So coming into the league, there was a lot of talk about Scottie Barnes not being a shooter at all, like not having any sort of range on his shot. There were jokes about like 0 level score and all this other stuff. And right away, it was mean. And right away, he disproved that. First game, I think his first shot was like this like gorgeous skyhook. Like right away, we were like, hey, look at this guy. And you saw that being disproved right away. And that's why he won Rookie of the Year. He had a fantastic rookie season. And in his second year, not to say that he regressed into being, all those mean jokes early on, but we saw that efficiency dip across the board. And I think and this is sort of where the Jakob Poeltl conversation comes up, because we're talking about a lot of guys' redundancies, is where we really saw Scottie excel is when he played your sort of nominal 5.
Okay.
That's where you really saw, I think Scottie's best month last year would have been January. That's where you really got to see him excels when he plays that sort of 5 for the team. That obviously takes a toll on people's bodies, but you're sort of using him in that way. It's similar to, and Raptor fans are going to get in so much trouble for this, but it's similar to everyone talking about, is Ben Simmons a point guard? Ben Simmons offensively kind of fits as your 5, right? Because he doesn't have that sort of shot yet. And
I think it's very kind that you said yet. That was very nice of you.
When people were having those conversations about Ben Simmons, it might have been year 2, 3. We're down the line now. But I think with Scottie, there's no reason, he's 21, right? There's no reason to believe that he can't progress. There's no reason to believe that he can't grow. Pascal Siakam also did not have a shot at all at this age. So he doesn't have much right now, but still much better. It's still much better. So I think that would be sort of the main thing. And as a ball handler and as your primary playmaker, there's going to be a lot of steps that Scottie's going to need to take, especially if the ball is just going to be in his hands and he's going to be the guy doing it. He can make really flashy passes, right? Like those no-look passes are gorgeous. You're talking about a big guy playmaking. That's always going to be great. We all love big playmakers. It's fun to watch, and it's also just smarter if guys can just see over the defense. But I think with Scottie Barnes, it's going to be how to get into the teeth of the defense. Because another thing that we're missing with Fred VanVleet is, he's not a guy who can finish at all, right? He really struggles, but he's also, as a ball handler, the guy who got you the most paint touches. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be something, I think a lot easier to do as a smaller guy than as a bigger guy getting in there. But that's going to be something where we're going to need to see Scottie take that next step. Those are going to be the areas that I'm watching just as the primary playmakers or primary ball handler. Can he get this team paint touches? How is his kick-out game? Can he finish also consistently, get to the free throw line? Those are going to be the things that we want to see from Scottie Barnes, and those are things that I think he can do. So I'm excited about the next step, but where he sort of took a step back last year is because, again, the offense doesn't prioritize him when you have Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam doing their thing, but also you need him to be a spacer in some ways, and he just can't. So as a screener, sort of your nominal 5 on offense, he, dribble handoff action, I think we're going to see a much different offense, I think. And I think that's what this comes down to, is with Darko, we'll hopefully see a much different offense than we saw last year. But I, again, don't think that's an entire knock on Nick Nurse. I think that's more so roster construction.
Yeah, with Scottie, I actually believe he'll end up being an okay standstill shooter. I don't know. I don't think he'll ever probably become a pull-up threat. I believe in his ability to get to the basket. I think even when you watch him, sometimes it feels like he doesn't get to the basket as much as he actually does, because he throws up that, that turnaround push out or that hook shot a lot. Yeah. And maybe you'd like to not him bail out as much. And I think he'll get to the free throw line more often because of his ability to get inside like that. The thing is, and I think this overlaps with your concern, is just when you mentioned Jakob Poeltl, he's not going to be in Scottie Barnes most of these lineups the nominal 5. You're going to just have this 5. And so can that processing speed as a playmaker increase? Because when he has like a head of speed, and it doesn't have to be in transition, but like if he's like turning a corner in the half court and like he's catching the ball and going, he can be really devastating, both as a scorer and a passer.
Yeah.
But it's in those slower, more methodical situations where if you have to call for a ball screen from Jakob Poeltl, or if the defense is just back and it's forcing you to set, I don't know that I'm not saying he can't do it. I just don't know how confident I am that like the dynamic between Scottie and Jakob, as Scottie, this driving force of your offense, is going to work with the current roster. You definitely feels like you need more shooting, but I think a lot of it is just going to come down to Scottie acting faster in slower situations. That might be a terrible way to phrase it, but like that's where I'm just the most curious.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I'm honestly really excited to see what this next. I'm excited to see what their fit is, because they signed Jakob on for long term. This looks to be the team. I know there are reports about like, can you get a Bogdan from Atlanta to help with your spacing? Are there some other people that you can add? But I'm excited to see what this team looks like. I think this will be a big year for Scottie.
Pascal Siakam, I feel like, is viewed as this, and we might have had the exact same discussion last year, as this good, not great player. And it felt like that persisted last year. What do you think is like the misconception about how well he performed last season or how valuable he is? And then also just sort of, what does he need to do? Like he shot, like, is it simply just, hey, if you could hit more than 34% of your catch and shoot threes, like that would be great, buddy. Like we don't need you to be a pull-up threat. Like, could you just hit like 37% of your catch and shoots? Like what are you looking or monitoring most closely with him this year?
Yeah, this is where I get a little delulu. So okay, a couple of things. One is I think the overall perception of Pascal Siakam comes from the fact that, again, we talked about this, we mentioned it already. He's doing this in a team that is not built to maximize his skill set in the slightest, right? There's a lot of conversations about this, in order for Scottie to develop and in order for Scottie to grow, you need more shooting. You need a team that's built around him, and that is true. But the same could be said for Pascal Siakam, and still Pascal Siakam continues to take that next leap. Pascal Siakam's ability to do this in negative spacing is something to behold. It is something that, I mean, maybe Shea for Team Canada, if I can just bring it back to that one more time, that I've seen. But like it is something, it is a sight to behold, his ability to create something out of nothing. But I think what it comes down to for Pascal, and we can look back at the numbers, the start of the year and the end of the year are very different. And I think a large part of that comes down to the usage that he has, but more importantly, the minutes that he plays. He has led the league in minutes the last 2 seasons. This is a guy who's dealt with the same injury over and over again. And we're starting to see that take a toll. You talk about his catch and shoot numbers. Pre-All-Star, he shot 37% in catch and shoot threes. Post-All-Star, 28%. So there is, and like that is not just like a one random trend from last season. That's kind of what happens. And that's probably going to continue to happen if he plays 40 minutes a night or whatever crazy thing it is. Hopefully now that you have Darko in instead of Nick Nurse and you have a more deep roster, this Raptors team has more playable guys than they had last season. That hopefully goes down. So I do think a large part of it is this load that he's had to carry for the team in playing and leading the league in minutes the last 2 seasons. You see that you see his numbers go down. You can go across the board. His efficiency continuously goes down post All-Star. I have to imagine that comes down to the load that he's had to carry. Yeah, I mean, 37% catch and shoot guy from 3 at the start of the season down to 28.5 maybe in the second half of the season, not second half of the season, but from February onwards, really points to a guy who just has to carry this massive burden. But I think at the start of the season, we were talking about Pascal is like, whoa, this next step that he just took. Is he going to be on like, where is he going to fall on your all-NBA list? It wasn't, is he going to make the team? It was, how high do we have him up here? Because he is just playing insane basketball. I think he had like a 40-point triple-double against the Brooklyn Nets. And it's like, this guy is unstoppable. There is actually nothing you can throw at him. And again, this is on a team that cannot shoot, which says a whole lot. It's not a team that is built to maximize his skill set. So what I would say to the rest of the world who doesn't understand what Pascal's doing is, one, the burden that he is carrying is the highest in the league. He's led the league in minutes the last 2 seasons, and that matters. And 2, he's on a team that is not built for him. It is built with copies of him, which does not really work very well. Right? So, like, being able to do that on a team that just is not there to maximize your skill set. Imagine if you had a Pascal Siakam around a bunch of shooting. I think you're talking about this team in a much different way. And if he doesn't have to carry the load defensively, also, because of this aggressive style of defense that we talked about Nick Nurse deploying, I think we're talking about Pascal Siakam in a much different light. So I do think that he's had to carry a pretty heavy burden for this Raptors team.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I think you can see it in a lot of just like some of their splits. Even look at Scottie last year, was at like 49% shooting on drives before the All-Star break. He was at 37.8 afterward. That doesn't happen like by another team's design. It's not like the league suddenly figured what Scottie's doing once he gets
figured Scottie out. Yeah.
Right. And look, I am in awe of, I still think there's an element of like what I'm concerned with Scottie Barnes, where I want Pascal Siakam to be able to move quicker in these slower situations. But he is such like this lateral shiftiness with the ball in his hands that Scottie doesn't yet have. And so it's like, if you're not going to surround them with more spacing, you kind of need Scottie to take a half-court ball handling trajectory from Pascal Siakam if you want him to even come close to maximizing. But I'm with you, and I find the talk of, I think it's clear the Raptors have shown that they will let Pascal Siakam get to free agency, just because we saw it with Fred, we saw it with Kyle Lowry. But what is more
stressed for that, Masai? Think about me,
right? And so, yeah, think about Imman, Masai. Come on, what is more likely though? Is it more likely that he signs an extension or that he gets traded? I'm not saying those are the only two options, but what do you think is more likely?
I hate to say that this comes back down to what. Okay, I'm not gonna say that. And here's the craziest thing is, if you asked me this last season about Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr., and if I knew that Jakob was coming, I'd be like, they'll sign back. This is easy. It's done. And that didn't happen. I did not foresee, again, Ime Udoka taking over the Houston situation and loving Fred VanVleet as much as he apparently does. So I would still bank on Pascal coming back. You look around the league, how many teams really have cap space? Number one, every team is scared of the second apron. Number two, I actually don't know who has cap space. I should probably look at that so I can be worried some more. But
there's not any contenders, if that's any consolation.
I was thinking that. It's like, so I think that there is a strong chance that he does re-sign with the Raptors. I will say this though, regardless of if he makes All NBA, I don't really believe the Raptors are giving him that supermax.
No, that's the oddest bit of reporting to me. I understand why he would want to be supermax eligible, because even just saying I'm supermax eligible, even if you don't sign it, but this idea that he wouldn't re-sign with another team because he wants to be supermax eligible, the Raptors have proven they're not going to pay that money just by letting Fred walk. And so if he leaves, I don't think it factors into that. I just think it would be if they let him get to free agency, he's not happy there, or maybe they were really lowballing him. But I would be, if he's supermax eligible and they gave him I would honestly probably faint from shock.
I can see him being super. Here's where I'll say, maybe if he's first team All NBA and it's like there was no one else that was going to take one of those forward spots from him. I love Pascal. Don't really foresee that happening this season. But that might be a scenario where it's like, all right, he's one of the two best forwards in basketball right now,
especially without because the positions are gone now, right? From All NBA.
So like, three best bigs. It's
going to be stocked with guards. Like, it's going to be Luka and Steph. And
there's no positions. I completely forgot that.
So if he makes first team All NBA, you might have to just because.
Yeah, so here's the thing: if he makes first team All NBA, sorry, Stephen Curry, you're splitting those votes with Chris Paul, apparently. Oh, that'd be the best. Chris Paul just gets some All NBA votes. Okay. So like that would be a scenario where I think they would pay him that. Outside of that, I don't think that they're gonna give him the supermax. But I still think he'll stay. I mean, Jakob is his best friend, right? They traded for Jakob. I think Pascal had a lot to do with that. They kept him. I think he stays.